if there's something that I really want, a dream that I have, an ambition that I have, I'm normally the type of person that would jump off the cliff and chase it. And me playing football in the NFL is an embodiment of me chasing, a dream that I had when I was a kid.
But you know what's interesting about it? You had to work to get into the NFL. It wasn't just like someone
Mhm.
did you this great opportunity. And I think a lot of times people look at those roadblocks and they view them as stop signs or go back signs. People kind of need to understand and hear that it's not always an easy road to get to that place that you want to go, but your belief has to outweigh the roadblocks that are put in front of you.
Yeah, it's true. It's timing. It's perfect timing that you made that comment. Actually, when I was in LA recently, and I was giving a speech at Pitch Fest, and I ended the speech by saying that no great thing ever done happened without first believing that it was possible.
Mhm.
And it's true that if you don't believe that it's possible, at a minimum, then there's no possibility for it happening. And I think subsequent to that is exactly what you said, that your belief then has to outweigh the potential detractions or obstacles that you'll face in order for you to even have the chance to succeed.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you won't keep going.
Hello and welcome to At the Podium with me, Patrick Huey. At the Podium is a multimedia platform where story by story, we explore the resiliency of the human spirit with people who are using their own personal journeys to leave a positive and transformative imprint on our world today. At the Podium holds a space for meaningful conversation, inspiration, and life. Today, I'm thrilled to share the podium with Calvin Lee Anderson. Calvin Lee Anderson is an American football offensive tackle for the New England Patriots of the National Football League. Calvin played college football at Rice University and as a graduate transfer for one season at the University of Texas. Calvin majored in mathematical economics at Rice University. And Calvin has also gained national media attention for solving the Rubik's Cube blindfolded. And as a result, he's the first professional athlete ambassador in history for Rubik's Cube. Calvin, welcome to At the Podium.
It's an absolute pleasure.
It is so good to make this conversation happen. I know we've been trying for a few months to get the timing right. So thank you so much for making time today. Full disclaimer, you and I are related. We're in the same family. You, so I tried to come up with questions that I didn't really know the answers to or have a good idea of what
Mhm.
they were. So hopefully we'll have a good conversation.
Yeah, it'll be fruitful. I know it. We got the two right people for it.
So I wanted to start with this quote from you, which I love that you had said in an interview. You said, being a football player is just a fraction of who I am. And I love that quote. And I think it's a pretty interesting organizational principle for our conversation today. And I'm wondering for you, did you always know that it was going to be a part of your life, football? And if so, when did you know that you were going to be, or that you could be as good as you are, and that it was going to actually happen for you?
Yeah, and I will say I love that quote too. And it still rings true today. I hope it still rings true for the rest of my life. I started playing football extremely young. Grew up in Texas, where football is maybe a substitute for religion. It's that important. And so, I started playing when I was 7 years old. I always had played, but I think I would say when I accepted a scholarship to go to Rice University out of high school, and when I got to Rice after starting my redshirt freshman year, I remember that summer. I had made some really good friends who are still best friends to me to this day, and I had a very distinct choice to make about how serious I was going to take football. I think it was at that point that I recognized that there was the possibility for this to not just be a hobby of mine, but to be an actual professional pursuit and way that I build wealth and take care of my family. So I remember that summer of 2016. It was, you could even call it a fork in the road, where I had to decide, that I was going to put my all into the football, everything that's required to be at the highest level, which is the preparation and the training, obviously, and the eating, the diet. And I'm glad I made that decision. It paid dividends and still is today.
And you had coaches in high school who really, I think in your freshman, sophomore year, really helped guide you on this path to that decision. I remember your eating shifted, as you just referred to. Like it became
Mm.
it's like a turning point for you where it became very serious for you.
It's true. I started at Georgetown High School, and we had a head coach who's now the athletic director. His name's Coach Dean, Jason Dean, and very impactful guy in my young football life. Because I think, this is the role that coaches play. They're able to sometimes see things in you that you can't see in yourself at the moment.
Mhm.
And so, because of his experience watching guys develop from middle school to high school to college to then adults, I think he was able to pick up on some aptitudes that I had on the field that could develop into professional level skills. And so I'm glad that he saw that in me. And I think without telling me directly, he started to push me in the direction of cultivating those skills to be as proficient as they are now. So certainly couldn't have made it without that guidance from him and so many other coaches.
Your career and career trajectory feels like it has been a very non-traditional path. And do you think that is an accurate assessment of your career? And how have you managed that path?
Yeah, it's very true for a number of reasons.
What are those reasons?
Well, the first is that obviously I went undrafted. So, I spent 4 years at Rice, grad transfer to Texas, and then didn't get drafted in 2019 NFL draft. And I remember being really frustrated about that. And so, not being drafted, for anyone listening that doesn't understand football as well, it means that you don't have the upfront financial commitment from a team that you would if you were drafted. So when you watch the NFL draft, the guys who are taken in the draft get some sort of financial investment from a team upfront. So
Mm,
it's the team saying in public forum, we believe in you enough to give you this upfront money with our expectations being present in where we take you in the draft. So the higher you go in the draft, the higher it is that the teams have decided to invest in you. The more they've decided to invest, and the more they expect from what you're hopefully going to be able to do for their team. So not going drafted makes it very difficult because when a team does not invest in you up front, you don't have a lot of leverage, and so you really have to do a lot in order to get the attention of the team and make the team. This to subsequently make the team. So I remember that first preseason. I was playing every position. I was playing guard and tackle. I was doing everything that I could possibly do to show the coaches that I was just as good as the guys who got drafted, if not better. And I think that's what they ended up seeing. There was a lot of, I'm skipping past a lot of hard work, late nights, and uncomfortable mental frames. But, I'm glad that I decided at that time to put in the work that was necessary. And I think what ended up happening is, the external, I think, started to represent what was happening internally, which is that I always believed in myself. I always knew that I could play in the league when I got there. So it was just about showing everybody else, showing the decision makers that I could, and it worked out. I ended up making the team in Denver, signed my first year, and then I spent 4 years there after two re-signs, and then signed with the Patriots last year in free agency.
So what is that like? Because you said you want to be drafted, you're in the draft doesn't happen. What are those first steps that you're doing to get yourself even on a team to where you can start to show what you can actually really do?
Yeah. So after the draft, if your name wasn't called, then you'll have a list of guys who are priority free agents. And so these guys will sign to a team after the draft. And the process after that is that we report for rookie minicamp, which
Mm,
is just rookies come in, some of them who were signed, some weren't, some trial guys. And it's like the first chance you get to see the coaches, be on the field, hear what it's like to be on an offensive field, hear what the play calls are, and show that you can keep up. It's also obviously in the midst of your peers too. So it's you, guys who have been drafted and guys who haven't, all get on the field together on a clean, even playing field, just to show what can you do without pads. It's to the off season. So that's the first step. I think going into it, understanding that there wasn't the financial commitment, I knew that each step was going to be important for a multitude of reasons. So the first chance I got to show that I can be on the field, listen intently, pick up what the scheme is, and work together in a team format was very important. And then there were some subsequent stages to that. Like after that OTAs, we showed up for actual OTAs, which was when we integrated with the older guys who had already been in the league and on the team in the NFL. And then you have to go through the OTAs portion of the off season, which is all the preparatory off-season workouts, and that's both on the field and in the weight room.
Mhm.
And then there's some preliminary introduction into what the offensive scheme is with the entire team there. And then you have a break before training camp, and they recommend that the rookies try to do as little as possible in that break so that they can be focused. The older guys might understand it a little better, which I would say I now do, but that time period is crucial because you're preparing for training camp, which is probably the hardest part of the year
Yeah,
physically on the body. So those are like the three preseason phases that you have to go through, and training camp is the most important because that's where you have to make the real case for can this guy be on the team. That's when the evaluation period really happens.
yeah,
And that's when you have you going against the other players on the team, rookies and veterans, and it's full pads. And the training camp is a preparation for the team to go into the season. So you have to show that you can be an asset to the team during the season. You know, being able to do well in the off season and do well when you have rookies around is one thing, but being able to be an asset to the team which is including guys who've been in the league 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years is a
yeah.
completely different story. So, to some it might be monumental, the odds that you have to overcome, but I would say it's the beautiful thing about the league. You take the best guys from all over and you put them all in this concentrated environment, and I think you really do end up getting the best out of guys. And so I think that first rookie year certainly got the best out of me.
So it's interesting because Bill Belichick, who was the head of the
Mm,
Patriots, has said that that first draft they wanted you,
mm,
and that it was sort of, I don't want to use this word, it's such a word that's overused, but it was a full circle moment for them to have you actually come and play for the Patriots. So why didn't that happen in the draft? If the team wants you, that's the team you want to go to. What's going on that prevents that from actually happening?
yeah, I mean, you have the same question. What I've learned, this is my sixth year now going into this upcoming NFL season. What I think I have learned about the draft process is that teams have a draft board, which is a list of players that they're hoping to target at different positions.
Mhm,
And they prioritize that list based on what the team needs are. And so after the season, a team will bring all the personnel and all the coaches in, and they will talk about what the areas of need are for the team. And that usually is based on the previous year's performance.
mhm,
And after a few weeks or months, it'll also include what you're able to do in free agency. And so by the time the draft has come, that meeting has happened and free agency has happened. So that in free agency, you're able to sign older guys who are in the NFL who maybe are have just expired their contracts, their previous year's contract, who are ready to sign with a new team. You have already so you're already going through the process of signing those older guys, and so
mhm.
now the draft is a chance to address the remaining needs for the team. And so everybody has these draft boards when they go into the draft, but depending on who gets taken in the draft, because it's numerical order, each team gets to pick at a certain spot. Certain guys that you have higher on your list than other guys might not be able to be taken because you have an opportunity to take a person at a position of need. And so you can't just pick the best guys on your list. You might feel like you have 10 quarterbacks that are all, high on your list. You can't take 10 quarterbacks because you can't play them all. So I think it was a combination of other areas of need becoming open earlier and there just not being enough picks to grab me that year.
Why was it football for you, though, in general? Because you have a fantastic degree from Rice, which is one of the top schools in the country. What was it about football that was like, I have this great degree, I'm going to put that to the side and go pursue this dream of football?
I think a few things. The first thing I think is I know that when I started playing football as a 7 or 8 year old, one of the things I fell in love with very early is this team dynamic of our sport specifically. And I think
Mhm.
in football, when you play offensive line, you can think of the offensive line actually as a team within the team, like a microcosm of the bigger team, because you have to operate as five people working as one. There has to be unity within the offensive line in order to succeed. And that's true of teams in aggregate as well. But I think when you look at the offensive line, that's what I really fell in love with is that you have four guys to next to you. They're all working in this unison in order to accomplish the same goal, and it has to be done every single play. And it also taught me humility from a very young age because I always played offensive line. So most people, they started playing running back or wide receiver, running around. And as they got older, they weren't as fast. They were maybe bigger than the other guys. So then they got, pushed down to offensive line. But that wasn't the case for me. I started playing offensive line, from the beginning. You know, I think that that part of the game always stuck with me because it was very synonymous with how I presented myself in real life. And I thank football for that because I learned that humility. I think it allowed me to learn a lot more about myself and then also develop a lot of different areas of my personal life that I wouldn't have been able to without having that experience as a youth. So when it got time to being at Rice, and funny enough, we've spoken about this, but my dream school was actually to go where you went to go to Yale. But I'm very glad that I ended up going to Rice. And when I got to Rice, because I always thought that I had my professional pursuits down. I had like a certain direction I wanted to go at least. But I loved football, and I genuinely loved football. I loved the sport, and so you know I started as a redshirt freshman, and I think that summer there was a significant shift in how I approached the game. And as I got into my sophomore and junior year, I remember I sat down. I actually called my dad, and we sat down and talked about it. About is there a dream here that I'm willing to put other things aside for and chase? It's a road most people don't travel, and do I think that it's worth what I'm giving up? So I decided to just take a shot, and I think that anybody who knows me would say that they've acknowledged this at some point in their interaction with me. But I've always been like a risk taker. I've never been risk averse, and
Mhm.
so if there's something that I really want, something a dream that I have, an ambition that I have. I'm normally the type of person that would jump off the cliff and chase it, and so that's what I did. That me playing football in the NFL is an embodiment of me chasing, a dream that I had when I was a kid.
But you know what's interesting about it is that you had to work to get into the NFL. It wasn't just like someone
Mm,
did you this great opportunity. And I think a lot of times people look at those roadblocks and they view them as stop signs or go back signs. People kind of need to understand and hear is that it's not always an easy road to get to that place that you want to go, but your belief has to outweigh the roadblocks that are put in front of you. Uh,
hmm
and I think that your journey really exemplifies that.
Yeah, it's true. It's perfect timing that you made that comment. Actually, when I was in LA recently, and I was giving a speech at Pitch Fest, and I ended the speech by saying that no great thing ever done happened without first believing that it was possible.
Mm.
And it's true that if you don't believe that it's possible, at a minimum, then there's no possibility for it happening. And I think subsequent to that is exactly what you said, that your belief then has to outweigh the potential detractions or obstacles that you'll face in order for you to even have the chance to succeed.
Mm.
Otherwise, you won't keep going.
Is that what the fifth year at Texas for you was about when you did that fifth year at Texas?
Yeah, I think the grad transferring to Texas was really about making an intentional step towards chasing this NFL dream. And so, like, going to Texas was how can I put myself in front of people that will challenge me to be better, that will bring out more of me? Because it's a safer option to say, I think I've done enough. Let's just go and see. And I think what's harder but more rewarding is to say, how can I increase the level of challenge or level of difficulty so that more can be brought out of me than maybe I thought was possible. And so going back to Texas, I knew I'd play against better opponents. I'd be on bigger stages. There was going to be more expectation. There was going to be more pressure. But I also know that all of those things are recipes for creating a better version of who I wanted to be on the field.
Mm,
And so I knew there was a risk involved in that because there was going to be some uncomfortability with being faced with greater challenges than I had faced to that point. But I think, like I mentioned before, I think that's a part of who I am and who are really our whole family. As you know this from Kiko, like I think our whole family, embraces this opportunity to be challenged by something that's greater than what we faced and overcome it to see what's on the other side of the hill or other side of the mountaintop. So yeah, that last year, going back to Texas was me challenging myself to face what was unknown at the time, but what I knew would bring more out of me.
where does that sort of belief, fighting spirit come from within you?
Yes, I mean I think it starts with how I was raised, and you know my dad well. Two major things he always taught us. One is that life is choice driven, which he always says. He still always says that. But I think there's a freedom in that that we can talk about another time. But life is choice driven, and that all things are possible to those who believe. And aside from him just saying that, when I was younger, I was put in positions and I was put in situations where I was able to see that for myself. I used to take Taekwondo lessons when I was a kid. And when you go to the Taekwondo dojo, anybody that's gone before, when you enter, you have to bow and say Taekwondo. You have to say it loud. Like you can't just walk out, oh, Taekwondo. Like you have to say it loud. And so you have to, it's uncomfortable maybe for some kids, but if it was uncomfortable for me. And so I would walk in there and I remember the first time I walked in, I felt real uncomfortable to yell out the Taekwondo. So I was like, I don't know, I want to do that. I started crying. It's like little kid Calvin. I started crying and I wanted to leave. And when we got in the car, my dad told me at one point, he was like, "Look, you have a decision now to make. You have a decision about if you're going to go in there and be uncomfortable and do the taekwondo, or if you're not." And so he didn't allow me to just soak up in my emotions and miss the point of the moment. He, I think, made it very clear to me, which I'm forever grateful for, that there was a choice involved. And I think what I learned from that is that if I'm willing to go and do the uncomfortable thing, then I just might have the opportunity to see what's on the other side of being uncomfortable, which in many cases in my life has been much more success and progress and relationship than I could have ever had without facing that uncomfortable feeling. So it certainly started with that when I was young. And I think also it's very synonymous with how I view faith and this idea of understanding your relationship with God, because I think there's a lot of faith needed and necessary in order to have some kind of connection with something that you can't fully understand. And
Mm,
more so than the religion part, I think it's, do you have the faith to believe in something or in a connection with something that you can't fully understand? It takes some humility in order to do that, and it takes certainly some faith.
mm. So 2023 was a
Oh
year
man.
you really needed some faith.
Yeah, no question. No
Because you
question.
because you and Sheree, your wife, you had essentially been on a missionary trip almost to Nigeria and Africa, and then you contracted malaria.
Mhm.
And it was literally 50-50 for you. We didn't know what was going to happen. You come back, you have a few good games, you have a couple of games out with the Patriots, and then you start to stumble because you run a training camp, you didn't have your legs underneath you. And
Mhm.
in that sort of moment when you were sort of finding your way to that elite level again in real time playing, you get hit in the chest, you have a heart contusion. I had to look
Mhm.
that up. I didn't know what a heart contusion was. And I'm like, you have a bruised heart? Um, and you said that what was happening for you was something that you just couldn't tackle in rehab, that it was
Mm,
something that was making you wait and you had to
yeah.
sit. And I wonder for you, what were the lessons that you took from that time? And how did you maintain your mental health and your faith through all of that really tough year?
Well, let me start with some brutal honesty. I believe when I had malaria and came back and had to be in the hospital, when I got out of the hospital, I had lost 17 pounds of muscle. I
Mm.
had to be out all of training camp. I think at the time I was tripping. Like at the time, I could not make sense of what was happening because I signed in the off season. I had all these things I wanted to do. It's brief. The amount of opportunity you get in the NFL is brief, so you want to make your impact when you have the chance. And I had had a good preseason, and I had been training. I felt like I was in the best shape of my life. Boom! I come back. You have malaria, like not a fever. You have malaria, like deadly falciparum malaria, kill you in 24 hours if you don't get medicine. And so at the time, I just couldn't really I couldn't put the pieces together of this perspective. And so it was a struggle. Like that missing training camp was a struggle. But I do think that I recognized, okay, I at least know I now can either choose to be upset and sulk about it, or let's try to come back. Like, let's get ready to come back. And so, I sunk myself into the rehab process, which I think, we worked pretty quick on that rehab. And I did everything I could to be back in order to play in the first game, which I did. And I think that in itself is an accomplishment, which I'm grateful for. Grateful I was able to do that. But I think there was a much larger lesson, and you mentioned mental health, and I think the focus that I should have been placing on my mental health and the mental side of this game, not just understanding what's going on and being reactionary and all that stuff, because I got all that, like I know how to do that, but are you engaging, for example, with your emotions? Are you understanding why you might be feeling a certain way on a certain day? Are you hiding from that? I think I learned a lot about mental health through my own journey. And it's I wouldn't say unfortunate that it had to be empirical evidence because I think it really did teach me specifically about my own mental health. And through that, I was able to navigate and have a better overarching understanding of mental health in general. But I am very, very happy that it clicked. And I think it didn't click initially when I came back from missing all of training camp. And so I think that there was some purpose and intent behind me having to be removed from the game that I love so much, and in a significant way. Heart contusion and malaria, the chances of either of those happening once is insane. There's never been a player with malaria ever in the history of the league. And now, not only do you have malaria, but then you have a heart contusion 5 weeks later. That's extremely rare. And so, I think when I was out with the heart contusion, that's when I had those sit down, just me in the mirror type moments, and they were needed. I had to understand more about what things were showing up in my life that I had not dealt with before.
Ooh.
And they all play a role. Like, just because I play football and I'm on TV playing, that doesn't mean that, I haven't had things in my life that I haven't dealt with correctly. And I think those things linger. It's energy, it's emotions, all those things you carry with you. And so I think that I had developed a habit over time of not engaging deeply with my emotions. And, I am so thankful. I'm so thankful now that I was put through the challenges I was last year because it gave me the space and the time to engage with what I hadn't engaged with for who knows how many years. I'm saying this now, and even now, I think I can't understand how perfect of the timing that this was in my life. I'm at 28. I'm sure in double the years I am now, I'll be able to have much more perspective on that. But I certainly recognize the importance of having that time to engage with the things that I was able to engage with. And I think now on that back end of that, not only physically, but and some of it is physical, like some of it is just, the efficiency of my eating and all this stuff. But I think it's collective. Like when your mind's not right, you're not feeling right inside, you don't feel right outside. And you can mask it up however you want, but it doesn't, like, when you're not feeling right. And maybe that's the best way to say it because everybody's different. And so being an elite level athlete, if somebody doesn't have a trained eye, they might not be able to see that I'm not operating at peak efficiency, for example, physically. But I can know that. And I think now that I understand what it's like to be clean on the inside, mentally with your emotions and everything, it makes it so much easier to recognize when that's not being exuded externally. So yeah, man, I think there was purpose behind me being separated from the game, and now I return with the knowledge and wisdom of somebody who has navigated the things that were keeping me from being off the game, not somebody who's running away from it and hiding it and throwing it in the back corner. Yeah, man.
You know, it's interesting because at some point, everybody, if you're lucky, will have that moment when you have to go back and deal with whatever it is, whatever those things are, to move forward. When I was 30, so a little bit older than you are now, I was almost killed in a really bad car accident that made me go
Oh
home
wow,
for 3 months and lay on the bed to recover.
wow.
And talk about those like moments when you have to face yourself. I mean, you know, it's kind of dramatic when you talk about it. In real time, it's happening much more subtly than that. You know, it's
Hmm.
not like the movie would make it. But like
Hmm.
those those are
I know
key,
what you mean.
you know, those are key moments for you when you have to be like, okay, this is either I learned from this or I'm really stupid. You know,
Hmm.
you
It's
know.
true. It's true.
We just mentioned Sheree, your wife, who literally saved your life. What role has she played in your journey and to what you are becoming as a human, as a man, as an athlete, I'm sure as a father one day? So what role is she in all of this?
Yeah, you're not overstating that when you say that she, quite literally in this sense, has saved my life. I think that the idea of her saving my life is a little deeper than, her bringing the thermometer and taking me to the hospital. I think that Sheree's introduction into my life was a significant turning point in my journey and trajectory. I think that I could talk about Sheree all day long. Sheree has helped me understand parts of myself that I hadn't understood before and that I wasn't even looking for, that I maybe didn't even recognize were there. Through my relationship with her, I've been, um, forced in a good way to assess myself much more critically and hold myself to a higher standard. But I think also I find so much more peace and equanimity within myself as a result of knowing Sheree. Like I always I say this to other people. It's like when I met her and we, came into knowing one another, it was like I was reintroduced to a part of myself that I had never met. It was one of the most familiar feelings I ever had.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think I am fully Calvin Anderson without Sheree. I think she is genuinely the missing piece to the full unity of who I am and who she is. And I think together in our marriage, we have literally become one. Like we're literally, the completion of each other. So I'm super grateful to be in that experience, and it's an ongoing one. And I know that's a continuous learning process. But I'm super grateful to be walking that with her through good and bad. So I think last year, um, you know, when we came back from Nigeria, we go every year. I was already feeling kind of sick, and Sheree has like I'm sure many men will say this about their wives, or people will say about their significant others that they have this sort of like intuition, like about their partner. And so Sheree certainly has that about me. And when we came back, I was already kind of sick, a little bit, like like I might have a cold or something, like that type of feel. And Sheree sensed something was off as soon as we landed back in the U.S. It's like she just knew something was not right with me, and so she was keeping a much more tailored eye on me and how I was feeling and what I was doing than I even knew that she was. And so I'm glad that she was in retrospect. But at the time, that's when we got back from Nigeria. I was feeling a little sick, but I was fine. I was like, oh yeah, I just need to sleep. Like I'll be fine. I just it's a lot of travel. You get tired from traveling anyway. I thought it was something like that. So we land in Boston. We go to sleep. We wake up the next morning, and I got a crazy fever. And Sheree woke up and she knew something was wrong. She said, I could feel your body heat when I was sleeping. Something ain't right. And she calls the CVS. She gets a thermometer ordered, and she sticks the thermometer in my mouth, and it's 105 point or 104.5. And so that was crazy already. Like, and we're at home, and I have 104.5 fever. So she calls my parents, and she's like, "Something's not right with me." She calls my dad, She's like, something's
Your
not
your
right
your
right
dad is a
now.
doctor. Your dad
Yeah,
is a
my dad's
doctor.
a doctor. Yeah, I should say that. So she calls the real expert, not me. She calls the real expert and is like, "Hey, something is really not right with Calvin. I feel like I should take him to the hospital." And so she does. She sticks me in the car. I didn't want to go. I'm fighting it the whole time because the whole time I'm thinking I had training camp in a week. Don't have time to be sick. I need to just sleep. We'll be fine. So she makes me go to the hospital, and it was in the car that I started feeling, kind of delirious. I couldn't tell what was actually happening, and part of that was because I didn't fully believe I was significantly sick. I just thought I kept telling myself, "Nah, I'll be fine." I got training camp next week. So we get to the hospital, and I remember I walked in, I almost collapsed, and it's crazy. Guy put me in a wheelchair, rolled me to the back, and they took my temperature again, and I was 108. So then they started putting IV bags in me, and they're like, "We need to get, doctors in the room. Like, we got to start figuring out. We got to do an assessment, see what's wrong with you. Where have you traveled?" They always ask you for your recent travel history. So I say, "Yeah, I was in Nigeria the
You're
day
like,
before yesterday," and they were like, "Okay." So when I told them I went to Nigeria, obviously they're going to test for the most notable diseases from that area, from that region. So they test for malaria. Then they come back and say he actually has malaria, and my malaria apparently was presenting atypical. So they weren't thinking initially, "Hey, he must have, parasites in his blood." They were thinking, "We need to try to figure out what it is, but it doesn't look like, it's you're dying." And I think part of that I understand now is because I'm an athlete. We're in significantly great health generally, and I'm also really big. So I think all of these things that usually work in my benefit were working to my detriment at this time when they were trying to figure out, "Hey, what is wrong with him?" So they came back. That's when they found out I had malaria. And, the whole time the doctors were a little bit resistant to the idea that, I could have had malaria or that there was something serious going on. But Sheree, the whole time, like a doctor herself, was yelling at these people, "He has malaria. He has parasites. Y'all need to get him anti-malarials immediately." And I do think that without her pressuring them and making it known that there was something serious, I don't think that they would have been as quick to move and to try to see, what more severe could have been there. So, yeah, I mean, Sheree, yet again, recognizes before I do when there's a situation at hand that is life-threatening and puts me in position to get the help I need, get the healing I need. And I promise you that that supersedes this situation. It's how she maneuvers our relationship and in its entirety from start to finish. My life has been enriched by Sheree's presence, relationship, care, and I can only thank God for her.
hmm. Speaking about the malaria and the heart contusion, you also played with a broken nose at one point. You're playing with the broken nose. I've seen you
That's
carve
true.
out the field before in
That's true.
the wagons, and Kiko and DeVar are like, and what people don't realize is that no one's telling anybody anything what's happening. So like we're just watching it on TV and we're like, what's happening? There's no
Yeah.
phone call that you're getting. So the family's in the dark as well. But I wonder, do you think football is a viable sport? Do you think that in 100 years
Mm.
they're gonna look back and go, what the heck were you guys doing?
I think selfishly and with bias, I would say, football will be around forever. But that's just not realistic. I think, at some point it'll be outdated. Um, but certainly I hope that as we look back or as our future generations look back, that they'll look back in context and try to see, what we took out of it at the time that we were here, were playing.
I wonder what your position is on the NIL. And how do you think that impacts universities? Or what responsibility does that put on universities to provide financial literacy courses and seminars
Hmm.
to then make sure that these players are not going to end up broke?
Broke. Being a finance guy, I certainly believe the responsibility falls on universities to educate not even just athletes, but people in general, their students in general about financial literacy and education so that they can manage and maintain themselves financially. I think the NIL is a very good thing, in my opinion, because if you look at this from a business perspective, how much money schools are benefiting um, off of kids playing sports for is tremendous. It's ridiculous. So um, hopefully over time we can develop this into a more structured system, and I think it's good that players are getting at an earlier age a piece of the pie that they're helping to create. They're significantly helping to create. So I am 100% a supporter of that, but I'm concurrently a supporter of them getting the education they need to manage these finances as early as possible, maybe even before college. We have a foundation, my wife and I, called the Lanny Anderson Foundation, and our primary focus is on financial literacy, and it's on financial literacy for the youth. So we want to equip children that traditionally have not come from backgrounds where they get this kind of information, or they don't have generations to prove where we show how we can pass down wealth, for example. And so I think the more education you give these kids, then the more autonomous decisions they can make about how they want to live their life. I think without the education, they're making uninformed decisions, and that's not freedom.
Hmm.
That's not freeing them, and it's not freeing the future athletes either. So I would love to see an era of kids that are not only making money from what they do on the field, the risks involved with that are significant, but I also would like to see them preserving that wealth into the next stage of their life so that they can see college sports NIL opportunities where you're able to get paid as a stepping stone to something else, as a launch pad into whatever else you want to do, even if that is going to the NFL. Because when you get to the NFL, you have to learn the same thing. And you see that the effects of guys not learning that is that they go broke very soon after. So, I think it's a very good thing, but I think it can only be a long-standing good thing with the proper education to be supplemented with it.
Mm-hmm. Calvin, you've had so much success. I mean, even and not just because the NFL, which is a big part of it, but even when you were younger and these coaches took an interest in you and saw something that you didn't see in yourself, and then this amazing education that you've had at Rice and then at UT, and then the journey through the maze of
Hmm.
drafts and getting from the Jets to the Broncos to the Patriots. And I wonder, there's been so much success in your life. What about those moments when it hasn't gone the way you wanted it to go? Like how have you navigated that? And have you had that?
Failure is a necessary part of not just your journey in life, but also to success. What do you do when things don't go the way you anticipate them to go? I think that's really the value in what they call failure, because life is chaotic. It never goes the way you want it to go or think it's going to go ever. Like it never does. Everybody has a plan, and it 100% doesn't go the way your plan sees it going. So I think in life, it's also vital to learn how you're going to respond to things when they don't go correctly. And I think in mastering that skill, you're able to achieve real success because once the failures inevitably come, you have taught yourself how to react to those situations so that you can turn them into something positive.
Hmm. So when we first started this conversation, the quote you said was, football is only a fraction of who you are. So I wonder who you are beyond number 76.
Yeah, beyond number 76, I'm a son, I'm a husband. I one day, like you said, I hope to be a father. I am a hard lover. I'm loyal. I I am a dreamer. There's no question about it. I'm a risk taker. I'm a God lover. Um, I try to be a people lover too. I would say I'm persistent, not someone who gives up. But above all that, I think that, and I'm intentional in this. I choose to love. I think you have a choice in life to not love all the time, um, and so I try to be very intentional about choosing to love. Um, but yeah, there's a lot, man, and I'm grateful that life has so much beauty in it. I know I've only experienced a fraction of it, but I'm looking forward to experiencing the rest of it.
What is your legacy? This year I'm talking to people about their legacies, and that means something different to everybody. And I wonder for you, what do you think or hope or believe that will be for you?
I hope to leave a legacy of being somebody that was brave enough to overcome and continue overcoming and not allow the greater challenges, because they get greater and they continue to get greater, to not ever let those stop me from running full speed ahead and going for it. And
Mm.
whatever it is, no matter what it is, I hope to be seen as somebody when we look back at Calvin, who was always willing to go for it.
Calvin Lee Anderson, thank you so much for your time today. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anytime, Patrick. Glad we finally got to do this.
Yes. And to those of you who are watching or listening, remember, we all have a voice. We all will leave a legacy. Use yours wisely. Bye, everyone, and thank you, Calvin.